The wheelchair sat motionless in the corner of Gate 47, and in it was a man whose eyes held more pain than any amount of money could heal. Nathan Cross, once the most feared and respected CEO in the tech world, stared blankly at the floor as hundreds of travelers rushed past him. His perfectly pressed suit couldn't hide the emptiness in his soul, and his million-dollar watch couldn't bring back the life he had lost. But it was the innocent voice of a 7-year-old girl that would shatter his world of isolation forever. "Mommy," little Zara whispered, tugging on her mother's worn jacket. "Why is that man all alone? He looks so sad." Those simple words would trigger a chain of events that neither Nathan Cross nor Nurse Jasmine Rivers could have ever imagined. Because sometimes, the most powerful transformations begin with the smallest acts of kindness. But before we dive into this life-changing moment, let me ask you, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. Subscribe to this channel to support our growth and never miss these incredible stories. 18 months earlier, Nathan Cross had everything. At 38 years old, he was the youngest billionaire CEO to ever take a tech company public. Crosstech Industries was worth $12 billion, and Nathan ruled his empire from the top floor of a gleaming Manhattan skyscraper. He had 3 homes, a private jet, and more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. He also had a heart made of ice. "Fire them all?" Nathan had said coldly to his assistant that fateful Tuesday morning. "I don't care if Johnson has 3 kids. His department failed to meet targets by 2%. That's unacceptable." His assistant, Patricia, had worked for Nathan for 8 years. She knew better than to argue, but something in her eyes showed disappointment. Nathan noticed but didn't care. Caring was for weak people, and weak people didn't build billion-dollar companies. That evening, Nathan was driving his brand-new Ferrari through the winding roads outside the city. He was on his way to fire his head of marketing in person, something he enjoyed doing. The rain was coming down hard, but Nathan was focused on the phone call he was making. "I want the entire West Coast division restructured by Friday," he barked into his Bluetooth headset. "If they can't handle the pressure, they shouldn't be working for me." He never saw the truck. The 18-wheeler had jackknifed on the wet road, and Nathan's Ferrari slammed into it at 70 miles per hour. The last thing he remembered was the sound of crushing metal and the terrifying realization that he couldn't feel his legs. When Nathan woke up 6 weeks later, his world had completely changed. "I'm sorry, Mr. Cross," Dr. Martinez had said gently. "The damage to your spinal cord is permanent. You'll never walk again." The words hit Nathan harder than the accident itself. He, who had controlled everything and everyone around him, could no longer control his own body. The man who had built his life on power and dominance was now dependent on others for the most basic needs. But the worst part wasn't the wheelchair. It wasn't the physical therapy or the pain. The worst part was the silence. As news of Nathan's condition spread, his so-called friends disappeared one by one. Business partners stopped returning his calls. The board of directors quietly pushed him out of his own company, citing his inability to fulfill his duties. Even his girlfriend, a model named Celeste who had claimed to love him, vanished the moment she realized he would never walk again. For 18 long months, Nathan lived alone in his penthouse apartment. He had enough money to hire the best nurses and caregivers, but money couldn't buy him what he desperately needed: human connection. He had spent his entire life pushing people away, and now that he needed them most, there was no one left. The loneliness ate at him like a disease. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Nathan would sit by his floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the city he once ruled, wondering if this was all his life would ever be. Nathan hadn't left his apartment in over a year, but today was different. His lawyer had insisted on this meeting in Los Angeles. Something about offshore accounts that required his personal attention. Nathan didn't want to go, but even he realized that staying locked away forever wasn't living. The airport was a nightmare for someone in a wheelchair, especially someone who had no experience navigating the world from this new perspective. Nathan's private nurse, Mrs. Henderson, was supposed to travel with him, but she had called in sick at the last minute. Nathan's pride wouldn't let him postpone the trip again. Now he sat alone in Gate 47, feeling more isolated than ever. His first-class ticket couldn't protect him from the stares and pitying glances of other passengers. Children pointed at his wheelchair, while their parents hurriedly pulled them away. Business people who might have once competed for his attention now looked right through him as if he were invisible. Nathan's hands clenched the armrests of his wheelchair. He had made a terrible mistake coming here. He should have stayed home, should have remained in his safe, empty world where no one could see what he had become. That's when he heard her voice. "Excuse me, sir?" Nathan looked up to see a woman in her early 30s standing beside him. She had kind brown eyes and was wearing scrubs under a thin jacket that had seen better days. In her arms was a little girl with the biggest, most curious eyes Nathan had ever seen. "I'm sorry to bother you," the woman continued, "but I'm Jasmine, and this is my daughter Zara." She was wondering. Jasmine paused and looked down at her daughter with a gentle smile. "Well, she wanted to know if you're okay. You look like you might need a friend." Nathan stared at them in shock. In 18 months, no stranger had approached him with anything other than pity or awkwardness. But this woman, Jasmine, was looking at him like he was just another person. Not a tragedy, not a burden, just a human being who might be lonely. "I'm fine," Nathan said automatically, his voice rough from disuse around strangers. But Zara, with the honesty that only children possess, tilted her head and said, "You don't look fine. You look sad like my mommy was when daddy went away." Jasmine's cheeks turned red. "Zara, sweetheart, remember what we talked about? Some things are private." But something in Zara's innocent observation hit Nathan right in the chest. This little girl, who couldn't have been more than 7 years old, had seen through his expensive clothes and carefully constructed walls in a matter of seconds. "It's okay," Nathan found himself saying. "She's not wrong. I am sad." It was the first honest thing he had said to another person in months. Jasmine studied his face for a moment, and Nathan could see the wheels turning in her mind. She was a nurse. He could tell from her scrubs and the way she carried herself with that particular blend of compassion and efficiency that healthcare workers developed. She was probably used to reading people, understanding pain that went deeper than physical injuries. "Would you like some company while we wait?" Jasmine asked. "Our flight to Los Angeles got delayed, and Zara here never meets a stranger." Nathan wanted to say no. Every instinct told him to push these people away like he had pushed away everyone else. But there was something about the way Jasmine asked, not with pity, but with genuine human kindness, that made him pause. "You're going to Los Angeles too?" he asked instead. "Job interview," Jasmine said, settling into the seat next to his wheelchair, while Zara climbed into the chair beside her. "There's a children's hospital there that might have an opening in their pediatric ICU. It's a long shot, but..." She shrugged with the kind of tired hope that Nathan recognized in himself. Why Los Angeles? Why leave? Nathan realized he didn't even know where they were from. "We're from Detroit," Jasmine explained, pulling a small bag of crackers from her purse and offering some to Nathan, who politely declined. "Things have been tough since my husband left. The hospital where I worked had budget cuts, and finding good nursing jobs in Detroit isn't easy right now. A friend told me about this opportunity in LA, so I saved up enough for plane tickets and decided to take a chance." Nathan noticed the way she said, "saved up," like every dollar had been precious and carefully counted. He noticed the worn edges of her jacket, the way she carefully rationed the crackers between herself and her daughter, the tired lines around her eyes that spoke of working double shifts and sleepless nights. But he also noticed something else. Despite everything she was going through, Jasmine had stopped to check on a stranger in a wheelchair. Despite her own struggles, she had raised a daughter who looked at the world with compassion instead of judgment. "What about you?" Jasmine asked. "Business trip." Nathan almost laughed. Business trip. Once upon a time, every trip had been about business, about deals and acquisitions and expanding his empire. Now he was just a broken man trying to hold onto the few pieces of his former life that lawyers and accountants hadn't already taken away. "Something like that," he said quietly. Zara had been listening to their conversation while coloring in a small book that was clearly well used. Suddenly, she looked up at Nathan and asked, "What's your name?" "I'm Zara Michelle Rivers, and I'm 7 3/4 years old." "Zara," Jasmine laughed. You don't have to tell everyone your whole name. But Mommy, you said it's polite to introduce yourself properly, Zara protested. Nathan found himself almost smiling for the first time in months. Your daughter is very polite, Jasmine. I'm Nathan. Nice to meet you. Nathan, Zara said solemnly, as if she were meeting a head of state. Do you want to see my coloring book? I'm working on a picture of a castle where everyone is happy. Before Nathan could respond, Zara had climbed out of her chair and was standing next to his wheelchair, holding up her coloring book. The picture was of a simple castle with stick figures standing around it, all with enormous smiles drawn on their faces. Everyone looks very happy in your castle, Nathan said, and he meant it. That's because in my castle, no one is ever lonely, Zara explained matter-of-factly. When someone is sad, everyone comes together to help them feel better. Nathan stared at the drawing, and something twisted painfully in his chest. When was the last time anyone had tried to help him feel better? When was the last time he had even wanted to feel better? Zara, don't bother the nice man, Jasmine said gently, but Nathan held up his hand. She's not bothering me, he said. Actually, it's nice to have someone to talk to. The admission slipped out before Nathan could stop it, and he immediately felt vulnerable and exposed. But instead of looking at him with pity, Jasmine just nodded with understanding. Travel can be lonely, she said simply, especially when you're dealing with challenges. Nathan realized that Jasmine had noticed his wheelchair. Of course, but she wasn't treating him like a broken thing that needed to be fixed or avoided. She was treating him like a person who happened to be in a wheelchair, a distinction that most people couldn't or wouldn't make. Attention passengers, came the voice over the intercom. Flight 447 to Los Angeles has been delayed indefinitely due to severe weather conditions on the West Coast. We apologize for the inconvenience and will update you as soon as we have more information. A collective groan went up from the waiting area. Nathan closed his eyes and felt the familiar weight of frustration settling over him. He should have known this trip was a mistake. Everything in his life went wrong now. Well, Jasmine said with forced cheerfulness, looks like we're going to be here for a while. She glanced around the terminal, and Nathan could see her doing mental calculations, probably figuring out how much money she could afford to spend on food and drinks during an extended delay. Mommy, Zara said quietly, are we going to have to sleep in the airport like that man on TV? Jasmine's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but she kept her voice steady. We'll figure it out, sweetheart. Don't worry. Nathan recognized that tone. It was the voice of someone who was scared but trying not to show it. Someone who was probably running low on money and options but refused to let their child see their fear. He had heard that tone before, from employees he had fired, from people whose lives he had upended without a second thought. He had never cared then. But sitting here, looking at this woman who had shown him more kindness in 30 minutes than he had received in 18 months, Nathan felt something he hadn't experienced in years. He felt the desire to help someone other than himself. Jasmine, he said carefully, I couldn't help but overhear. If the flight gets canceled, do you have a place to stay tonight? Jasmine's cheeks flushed red. We'll be fine, she said quickly. I'm sure the airline will figure something out. But Nathan had traveled enough to know that airlines rarely figured out accommodation for passengers during weather delays, especially not for people who couldn't afford to demand better treatment. An idea was forming in Nathan's mind, an idea so unlike anything he would have considered in his former life that it almost scared him. But as he looked at Zara, still clutching her coloring book with its castle full of happy people, he realized that maybe it was time to try being someone different. Maybe it was time to try being someone better. I have a suite at the airport Marriott, Nathan said quietly. It has 2 bedrooms. If the flight gets canceled, you're welcome to stay there tonight. Both of you. Jasmine's eyes widened in surprise, and Nathan could see her internal struggle. Pride warring with practicality. Suspicion warring with desperate need. That's very kind, she said carefully, but I couldn't impose like that. We don't even know you. My name is Nathan Cross, Nathan said, and for the first time in 18 months, he didn't feel ashamed to say his own name. I used to run a tech company. I'm not a dangerous person, Jasmine. I'm just someone who understands what it's like to be far from home with nowhere to go. Something in his voice must have convinced her, because Jasmine's expression softened. Why would you do that for strangers? She asked. Nathan looked down at Zara, who was still standing beside his wheelchair, her small hand now resting on his armrest with complete trust. No one had touched him voluntarily since his accident, not without being paid to do so. Because, Nathan said slowly, 18 months ago, I forgot how to be human. And today, a 7-year-old girl reminded me. Before Jasmine could respond, another announcement crackled over the intercom. Attention passengers of Flight 447. Due to continuing severe weather in Los Angeles, this flight has been canceled. All passengers are advised to. The voice faded into background noise as Nathan made a decision that would change everything. He reached for his phone, not to call his lawyer or his assistant or anyone from his former life. He was going to call the hotel and make sure there was room for 3. But as he began to dial, Nathan had no idea that this simple act of kindness was about to set in motion a series of events that would not only transform his own shattered life, but would also save Jasmine and Zara from a danger they never saw coming. Because sometimes, the people who need saving the most are the ones trying to save others. And sometimes, the most unlikely guardian angels come in wheelchairs. The airport Marriott suite was more luxurious than any place Jasmine had ever stayed. As she tucked Zara into the king-sized bed in the second bedroom, she couldn't help but feel like she was living in a dream. Just hours ago, they had been facing the possibility of sleeping on airport chairs. Now her daughter was giggling as she bounced on a mattress that probably cost more than Jasmine's monthly rent. Mommy, this bed is like sleeping on a cloud, Zara whispered excitedly. Shoo, sweetheart. Jasmine smiled, brushing her daughter's hair away from her forehead. Mr. Nathan is being very kind to us. We need to be respectful guests. But as she said goodnight to Zara and closed the bedroom door, Jasmine's smile faded. She walked to the living room where Nathan sat by the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the lights of New York City. The silence between them felt heavy with unspoken questions. Thank you, Jasmine said quietly, settling into the chair across from him. You didn't have to do this. Nathan turned his wheelchair to face her, and in the soft lamplight, Jasmine could see just how much pain lived behind his eyes. I had to, Nathan said simply. For the first time in 18 months, someone looked at me and saw a person instead of a problem. Do you have any idea what that feels like? Jasmine studied his face carefully. As a nurse, she had seen countless patients struggle with life-changing injuries. But there was something different about Nathan's pain. It went deeper than physical trauma. Tell me what happened, she said gently. For a moment, Nathan was quiet. Then, as if a dam had burst, the words began pouring out. He told her about the accident, about losing his company, about the friends who disappeared and the girlfriend who left. He told her about 18 months of isolation and bitterness, about becoming someone he didn't recognize. I was not a good person, Jasmine, Nathan said, his voice barely above a whisper. I destroyed people's lives because I could. I fired families right before Christmas because it looked good on quarterly reports. I stepped on anyone who got in my way. Maybe I deserved what happened to me. No, Jasmine said firmly, leaning forward in her chair. No one deserves to be alone and in pain. Yes, maybe you made mistakes. Maybe you hurt people. But that doesn't mean you can't change. That doesn't mean you're not worth saving. Nathan looked at her in amazement. How can you say that? You don't even know me. I know that you invited 2 strangers to share your hotel room when you could have just walked away, Jasmine replied. I know that my daughter feels safe with you, and Zara has excellent instincts about people. I know that whatever you were before, you're trying to be someone better now. Nathan felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been frozen solid for 18 months. What about you? He asked, desperate to change the subject away from his own vulnerability. You said your husband left? Jasmine's expression darkened, and she looked down at her hands. David couldn't handle having a sick child. When Zara was diagnosed with a heart condition 3 years ago, he said he didn't sign up for medical bills and hospital visits for the rest of his life. So he left us. Nathan felt a surge of anger on behalf of this woman and her daughter. He abandoned his own child because she was sick? The irony is, Jasmine continued with a bitter laugh, Zara's condition turned out to be much less serious than the doctors initially thought. With the right medication and regular checkups, she can live a completely normal life. But David was already gone by the time we got the good news. That's why you're going to Los Angeles? For her medical care? Partly, Jasmine nodded, but mostly because Detroit has been tough since the divorce. David left us with a lot of debt from Zara's initial medical expenses. I've been working double shifts at the hospital, but it's still not enough. This job in LA pays almost twice what I make now, plus it has excellent health insurance. Nathan was beginning to understand the weight this woman carried on her shoulders. Single mother, nurse, caregiver to a child with medical needs, trying to rebuild a life that someone else had shattered. You're incredibly strong, he said. I'm incredibly tired, Jasmine corrected with a sad smile. But when you have someone depending on you, you find strength you didn't know you had. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, two broken people who had found unexpected comfort in each other's company. Nathan realized that for the first time since his accident, he wasn't thinking about his own problems. He was thinking about how he could help this remarkable woman who had shown him such kindness. That's when Jasmine's phone rang. She looked at the caller ID and frowned. That's strange. It's the nursing supervisor from my hospital in Detroit. Why would she be calling this late? Nathan watched as Jasmine answered the phone, her expression growing more and more worried as she listened. What do you mean the police were asking about me? Jasmine said into the phone. I don't understand. What medication shortage? I never. No, Carol. I would never steal drugs from the hospital. Nathan saw all the color drain from Jasmine's face. They're saying what about my access card? Jasmine's voice was rising in panic. That's impossible. I was working in pediatrics that night, not the pharmacy. Carol, you have to believe me. I would never. The call ended abruptly, and Jasmine stared at her phone in shock. Jasmine, what's wrong? Nathan asked, wheeling his chair closer to her. Someone has been stealing medications from the hospital pharmacy, Jasmine said, her voice shaking. High-value drugs that are sold on the street. And they're saying that my security access card was used to get into the pharmacy during the thefts. Nathan's blood ran cold. That's impossible if you were working in pediatrics. That's what I told them. But Carol says the police have security footage and digital records showing my card was used. They've issued a warrant for my arrest. Jasmine stood up and began pacing frantically. This can't be happening. I never stole anything. I don't even know how to sell drugs on the street. But if they arrest me... She stopped pacing and looked at Nathan with terror in her eyes. What happens to Zara? What happens to my daughter if they arrest me? Nathan had built his fortune on reading people, on understanding their motivations and weaknesses. And right now, every instinct he had was telling him that Jasmine Rivers was telling the truth. But he also knew that sometimes the truth wasn't enough. Think carefully, Nathan said. Who else had access to your security card? Who could have copied it or stolen it? I don't know. Jasmine cried. I always kept it with me. The only time I didn't have it was... She stopped suddenly, her eyes widening. Oh my God. What? What is it? My ex-husband David. He works in hospital IT systems. He helped design the security access software for half the hospitals in Detroit. When he left, I was so upset that I didn't think. I never changed my access codes. He would still know all of my login information. Nathan felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in his mind. Could he have cloned your access card? Easily, Jasmine whispered. He has the technical knowledge and the equipment. But why would he do this to me? Why would he destroy the mother of his own child? Nathan had a terrible suspicion he knew why. Jasmine, does David pay child support? He's supposed to, but he's been dodging the payments for months. The court ordered him to pay, but he keeps claiming he has no money. But if you were arrested for drug theft, if you lost your nursing license and went to prison, he wouldn't have to pay child support anymore. Jasmine finished, the horror of realization washing over her face. And he could petition for custody of Zara, claiming I'm an unfit mother. Nathan felt a rage building inside him that was unlike anything he had experienced since his accident. Someone was trying to destroy this innocent woman and take her child away, all to avoid paying child support. "We have to call the police," Jasmine said desperately. "I have to explain what really happened." "No," Nathan said sharply. "If you call them now, they'll arrest you immediately. You'll be fighting this from jail, and Zara will go into the system. We need proof first." "What kind of proof? How do we prove that David cloned my access card?" Nathan was quiet for a moment, his mind working furiously. Then he looked up at Jasmine with determination she had never seen before. "I may not be able to walk anymore," Nathan said, "but I still have resources. I still have connections. And I still know how to fight." Nathan pulled out his phone and began making calls. The first was to Marcus Chun, the best private investigator in New York City. The second was to his former head of cybersecurity. The third was to a lawyer who specialized in healthcare fraud cases. By 3 a.m., Nathan had assembled a team of professionals who were working around the clock to investigate David Rivers and uncover evidence of his scheme. "Why are you doing this?" Jasmine asked as Nathan finally hung up from his last call. "You barely know me. This isn't your problem." Nathan looked at her with more clarity than he had felt in 18 months. 18 months ago, I would have said you were right. I would have wished you luck and walked away. But sitting here tonight, watching you fight for your daughter's future, I realized something important. "What's that?" "I spent my whole life taking things from people. I took their jobs, their security, their hope. I told myself it was just business, but it was really just cruelty." Nathan's voice grew stronger as he spoke. "Maybe I can't undo all the harm I caused. Maybe I can't walk again or get my old life back. But I can choose to be different now. I can choose to give instead of take." Tears were streaming down Jasmine's face. "Nathan, you and Zara gave me something today that I thought was gone forever," Nathan continued. "You gave me hope. You gave me a reason to care about something other than my own pain. Let me give you something back." Just then, Nathan's phone rang. It was Marcus Chun, the private investigator. "Nathan, you're not going to believe what we found," Marcus said excitedly. "David Rivers has been living way above his means for the past 6 months. New apartment, new car, expensive vacations. And get this, he's been selling high-end medical supplies and pharmaceuticals through encrypted online marketplaces." Nathan put the phone on speaker so Jasmine could hear. "We traced the digital footprints from the hospital security system," Marcus continued. "David definitely cloned his ex-wife's access card. We have timestamps showing that he was physically in the hospital building during several of the thefts, despite not being scheduled to work those shifts." "Is that enough to clear Jasmine?" Nathan asked. "More than enough. We've got financial records, digital evidence, and security footage showing David entering and leaving the hospital. The guy got cocky and didn't cover his tracks very well." Jasmine collapsed into her chair, relief washing over her like a wave. "There's more," Marcus said. "We dug deeper into David's finances and found something interesting. He's been planning to flee the country. He has a plane ticket to Brazil leaving tomorrow morning, and he's already transferred most of his money to offshore accounts." Nathan and Jasmine looked at each other in shock. "He was going to frame me and then disappear," Jasmine whispered. "He was going to destroy my life and abandon Zara completely." "Not anymore," Nathan said grimly. "Marcus, call the police and FBI immediately. Make sure they arrest David before he can get on that plane." As Marcus hung up to contact law enforcement, Nathan turned to Jasmine. "It's going to be okay," he said. "You're going to be cleared of all charges. You're going to keep your nursing license. And David is going to prison for a very long time." Jasmine couldn't speak through her tears. She knelt down beside Nathan's wheelchair and took his hands in hers. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for saving us." "You saved me first," Nathan replied softly. At that moment, the bedroom door opened and Zara padded out in her pajamas, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Mommy? Why are you crying? Are you sad?" Jasmine quickly wiped her tears and pulled her daughter into a hug. "No, sweetheart," Jasmine said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm crying because I'm happy. Sometimes grown-ups cry when they're really, really happy. Zara looked confused but accepting of this adult logic. She turned to Nathan and studied his face seriously. "Mr. Nathan, are you happy too?" Nathan looked at this little girl who had started everything with her innocent question about why he was sitting alone. He looked at her mother, who had shown him that kindness still existed in the world. He thought about the team of people he had assembled tonight, working together to fight injustice instead of creating it. For the first time in 18 months, Nathan Cross smiled. "Yes, Zara," he said. "I'm happy too." 6 months later, Nathan pushed his wheelchair through the automatic doors of St. Mary's Children's Hospital in Los Angeles, a place that had become as familiar to him as his own home. He found Jasmine in the pediatric ICU, just finishing her shift with the same compassionate care he had witnessed that first night at the airport. "Ready to go home?" Nathan asked as Jasmine gathered her things. "Always?" Jasmine smiled, leaning down to kiss his cheek, a gesture that had become natural between them over the months. They drove to the house Nathan had bought in the Hollywood Hills. Not the massive mansion his old self would have demanded, but a comfortable home with wheelchair accessibility and a big backyard where Zara could play. It was the first place Nathan had ever lived that felt like a home instead of just a display of wealth. Zara ran to greet them at the door, her energy boundless despite her heart condition that was now perfectly managed with medication. "Nathan, Jasmine, guess what happened at school today?" Zara bounced excitedly as they came inside. "Tell us everything," Nathan said, and he genuinely wanted to hear every detail of her 7-year-old adventures. As they sat around the dinner table, the three of them had become a family in every way that mattered. Nathan reflected on how completely his life had changed. David Rivers had been sentenced to 8 years in prison for drug theft, fraud, and child abandonment. Jasmine had been completely cleared of all charges and had been offered the job at St. Mary's with an even better salary than originally discussed. Nathan had used his resources to establish a legal defense fund for healthcare workers who were falsely accused of crimes, ensuring that no one else would have to face what Jasmine had faced alone. But the most important change was the one that had happened inside Nathan himself. "Nathan," Zara said suddenly, interrupting his thoughts, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart. Do you remember when I drew you that picture of the castle where everyone was happy?" Nathan smiled. "I remember. You said it was a place where no one was ever lonely." "Well," Zara said seriously, "I think we live in that castle now." Nathan looked around the table at Jasmine and Zara, the two people who had saved him from a life of bitterness and isolation. They had shown him that even someone who had lost everything could still choose to love, to help, to be better. "You know what, Zara?" Nathan said, reaching across the table to take both of their hands. "I think you're absolutely right." Outside, the California sun was setting over Los Angeles, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Inside their home, three people who had found each other in the most unexpected way continued building the life they had all been searching for. Nathan Cross had been many things in his life: a ruthless CEO, a bitter invalid, a man consumed by his own pain. But now, for the first time, he was simply and completely happy to be exactly who he was. A man in a wheelchair who had learned that the greatest strength comes from lifting others up. And it had all started with a little girl's question: why is he all alone? The answer, Nathan now knew, was that none of them had to be alone anymore. The end. Thank you for watching this incredible story of transformation, kindness, and second chances. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to support our growth and be notified of more amazing stories like this one. Remember, sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change everything.